Hello my lovely Flosstube friends, welcome back to the channel. I would have loved to have been able to do a live stream today. Unfortunately, that is not going to be the case. I need to be in London bright and breezy first thing tomorrow morning. And because of that, the live streams on a Sunday night are they're too late for me to do everything that I need to do and prepare myself to go into the office and get to bed nice and early. So, because I cannot be there with you in person this evening, I thought I would do a stitch with me rather than a live. So, as you can see, we are working on Magwayan, Bella Filipina. This is my fancy lady, as part of my Teresa Made Me Do It sale. I've been working on this on the train and did this lovely teal colour along here. When I was looking to move and do some stitching on the train, the colour that I needed to stitch with was this colour here. Now, this is not a DMC cotton. This is a DMC satin. Now, this is my first time and my first experience of working with the DMC satin. And I am so pleased that I took the time not to try and stitch this on the train because it's a bit of a slippery little sucker. So as you can see, I've done a little bit of it here and here to see how the thread behaves. And yeah, it takes a little bit of taming and managing. So let me just show you a strand of it. So literally this has just been pulled this morning and just done this little section here. And this is the thread. Now, it is a bit unruly, people. So for those of you that have never worked with a DMC satin, literally as you pull the 6th strand, this is what it goes like almost instantly. So it's lovely because you can easily pull a thread. However, if you notice at the ends here, they tend to fray a little bit. Now, under normal circumstances, I would do a normal standard loop start. Because I'm stitching this with 2 strands, I would literally, imagine this is 1 thread. I would literally fold the end, there we go, and do a loop start method. Now, my suggestion for this is not to do a loop start method. The reason I say that is I did that with this bit, and for that entire run, I constantly had to even out the threads so that they were equal on both sides, and it had a tendency to want to come off the needle within a split second. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert at this because I'm anything but, because this is my first experience of working with this thread. However, I have worked with other silk threads that are equally unruly and equally slippy. So how am I going to work with this thread? Not in the usual way, I have to say, because yeah, I've tried it and I've tested it. Now there may be some people out there that use this thread on a regular basis and have a trick or a tip. Now, what my trick or tip is, and like I say, I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination, is instead of doing it in the usual, put the 2 ends together, thread the needle, stick that end on the needle, and then do a loop start that way, I'm not going to do that. Shock horror. So I'm just going to thread one end of my needle with this thread. She says it's already fraying. There we go. Get you on there, you little sucker. Now, I'm now going to put my needle in the loop and have the 2 open ends at the end, like so. Like that. You can see how unruly it is. It's already starting to fray on these ends. It's got like a mind of its own. Do you see that? It's fraying. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tie a knot. 1, because it keeps it on the needle, and 2, it will stop it from having one thread uneven to the other as you stitch, because that was what was happening when I tried stitching this as a standard loop start. So all I'm going to do is my 2 open ends at the bottom, I've tied those together. So because that looks really messy, I'm now going to just trim that, because I don't want that at the back of my work. Go, get rid of that. So it doesn't look quite so bad now. So I'm going to tie those 2 ends together, and this is how I'm going to work with this thread. Now, some people will be in absolute horror by the fact that I've just put a knot at the back of my work. I don't have a problem with the knot at the back of my work if it's going to make the experience of stitching with this type of thread either a possibility or make it so that I don't lose the will to live. I don't know how much of this thread there is. Let me just mark my chart. I have no idea how much of this thread there is to stitch, so I'm going with the easiest option. And this way, because I'm doing it like that, I don't need to worry too much about keeping my thread straight, because they can't become uneven and unruly, negating the need to constantly sort the threads out. Now, like I said, I'm no expert. I've never confessed to be an expert at cross stitching, but sometimes there are certain things that I hear where people say, oh, but you're not supposed to do that, and you mustn't do this and you mustn't do that. It might not be the most professional way to do it, by putting a little knot at the back, but if it makes my stitching more enjoyable and makes threads such as this less problematic and more of a joy, then I will do what is needed, because that's just how I do it. My stitching is supposed to be enjoyable. If I'm sitting here trying to tame a really unruly thread and it turns into a big old hot mess, it makes it so that I don't want to stitch on it. I don't want to pick it up. I don't want to have to deal with the threads. I don't want to have to deal with what happens when it all goes very, very wrong, which it can do. So I will always go with the most sensible option for me. That's not to say that it's the right way. It's just what makes it so that actually I don't have a problem stitching with that thread. It's a bit like when I work with the invisible thread when I'm doing my beading. A lot of people, they refuse, point blank, not using it. It's so unruly. It's so hard to see what you're doing. It makes the experience so dreadful and daunting and just generally unenjoyable that it's like, well, I'm not stitching on that then, or I'm not going to use that thread. This is sort of a similar type of beast, I think, this thread, in the respect that if it's not going to behave itself with the normal standard way that I would do my stitching, then I need to find a way for it to behave. And if that means that I veer away from what is potentially the correct way, then I will. Because for me, stitching is about the enjoyment. The stitching is about relaxing. The stitching is about seeing something come to life that makes me happy, warm and fuzzy on the inside, and to feel that it's a job well, it's a job well done. I'm quite proud of myself for actually achieving whatever it is that I've achieved. However, if someone tells me that I'm doing something that under normal circumstances I absolutely love, that I'm doing it the wrong way and that it's not supposed to be done that way, and then they say, well, you need to do it this way. If all of a sudden the experience becomes tiresome or a stress, anything that basically makes my stitching stressful, at that point it's like, well, this isn't what I'm sitting here stitching for. If I'm getting stressed out by it, there must be something wrong. And no matter amount of how much they say there's a correct way to do something, if it makes the stitching enjoyable, why on earth would I do it? So for me, I don't have a problem with the little knot at the back of this thread. I just have to be mindful where I start with the knot, so that I know that I can put a stitch next to it and not have to worry about what the thread is likely to do. You can see how unruly it's getting, and that's me stitching it when both the ends are tied together. When the ends weren't tied together, the fraying was happening almost like instantaneously. The threads were just constantly uneven to each other. At least this way, with the ends tied together, the only slip that I can get is at the needle end. And by making sure that each stitch is done with a small check of the tension on the end where the needle is, I know that the two legs of this thread are actually together. I'll show you what I mean in a minute when I get to a smaller section of thread. But now this rather unruly and unpleasant thread is no longer that unpleasant at all. I mean, just the experience, you know, if I'm sitting here talking to you whilst I'm stitching on this, and that small piece of stitching that I did before I hit record these bits, these, one, took me longer, and two, were a total faff just for that small portion. And I've already managed to get this nice little run of thread without half the problems. So the proof is in the pudding. Now, if you're one of those people that says everything has to be done the true and correct way, whatever that may be, I mean, who decides what is true and correct? I do not know. Stitching Guild might argue with me with that, but for me, true and correct for me is as long as my stitching is pleasant and pleasurable and I get great satisfaction out of it. Now you can see here, so when I was saying about the difference of having the two open threads at this end of the needle to do the loop start, to do your two strands, because I've not done that, you can see that when I'm putting a little bit of tension on this thread, if you take the tension off, instead of just laying about like it normally does, this, you can see it's already got like a bit of a kink in it where the needle is. Can you see that? So, like I say, it's got like a life of its own, or a mind of its own. So by tying the two ends together and using the loop against the needle, makes it so that instead of having to keep straightening the threads and then basically losing more thread because you'd have to finish earlier because you always end up with one leg that's shorter or longer than the other, I don't have that problem with this because the needle is keeping the two ends together, because the two ends are actually tied together and are back up here somewhere. So there is a method to my madness. Let me just finish this thread off. So I just flipped the work over, but because it's out of the camera shot, I'll edit that out because you can't really see anything. So like I was saying, now this is the strand of 6 that I just pulled when I started this, and they're already, it looks like a spider's web, or it looks like a spider's legs. It's, yeah. However, I mean, it's easy to pull. It's exactly the same as you pull a normal DMC thread. But it has got a lot of slip to it. You can feel the slip. It's very nice and shiny. It's very nice and silky feeling. But let's be honest, when we're stitching and it's on a needle, slippy is not what we want. That's about the only time we don't want slip, is without thread against the needle. So I'm just straightening my ends up here. So I'm doing a quick knot. So literally put the ends on the needle. I'll wrap 3 times around my needle. Hold it with my fingers. Pull it off the end and then just pull. Now, when I do this, it does make a bit of a hot mess. So hence the reason why I just trim the ends, just so that it's not a huge great bulk of knot at the back. It's not pretty by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't care because it's at the back of my work. I'm never going to be that person that has any of my work sort of took apart for people to admire what the back of my work might look like. So because of that, I can handle a little knot at the back. I really can. See, you can already see that one of those stitches is slightly, I didn't pull the thread with the tension. So with this, you need to make sure that when you pull the needle through, that you've got a good tension. And I'm not saying you need to actually apply lots of tension and start tugging at it. Just make sure that they're laying together. Let's move my chart out of the way. And I make sure that I give the needle some room on the threads to make sure that when I bring the needle up, the 2 threads are equal on both sides. And that makes sure that the 2 strands are the same length. So there should be no puckering of threads where you end up with one thread that's sitting more proud than the other. I love the colour, I have to say. Colour is gorgeous. It's a gorgeous colour. But is it a pleasure to work with? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. But that's not to say that it's an unpleasant experience, but that's because I'm doing it my way. And I think this is where I sort of might be slightly controversial to others, in the respect that there's a lot of people that believe that there is a certain way that things should be done within our stitching, and that it has to be done the professional way or the correct way. I personally am like, well, if it works for me, I'm winning. Just counting my way across. Oh, that's it, I think. Okay, so again, I'm making sure that the threads are taut together before I actually make the stitch. So whilst I sit here stitching away, oh, see how it puckered then? Did you see how that was sitting a bit too proud? That's why I give it a little tug. That little tug just fixes that little issue. And you can always sort of stroke the thread a little bit as you go. It's done it again. So this is what I was saying. So if you look, these are okay. This one's is because one thread is still not as taut as the other thread. So when I give that a little tug, although you don't want to be tugging the fabric too tight, it just straightens those threads out so that they both lay down, if you like. They make good bedfellows. 2, 3, 6. Now, have I gone right? Yes. Just needed to make sure that was gonna marry up the correct way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So, people, the plan for today. It done nothing but rain yesterday. Well, I say that. I got out in the garden. So, me and Mum had to go to the opticians yesterday. One, because Mum wanted to get her eyes checked and she wanted some new glasses. And I have been having all sorts of problems with my eyes since I made a switch on my contact lenses. Now, originally, I used to have contact lenses that worked, they're called mono contact lenses. So because I've got stigmas in both eyes, stigmatisms, I'm sort of restricted-ish as to what I can have and what I can't have. So I used to have it that one contact lens in one eye would do my short distance and the other eye would do my long distance. And I've had my contact lenses like that for years. And then one day, all of a sudden, it just wasn't working. Not for everyday stuff. Everyday stuff seemed to be fine, but for my stitching. So I'd go to work, everything could be fine for work. The more tired I got, sometimes I used to find that things that were close weren't overly clear, but then things that were further away weren't overly clear either. So when I went back to them and I said, I'm getting a bit annoyed with it. Do you have a suggestion? So the suggestion, when I had one eye for short and one eye for long, was basically there is no answer. And I was like, well, it's not working because the more tired I get, I can't see. So I said, I need something alternative. In the end, I made the decision that I would use my contact lenses for distance. And then that way, in my mind, I could then put a pair of readers on to be able to read something or to, anything like close-up work. Because I was like, well, if the contact lenses are working for distance, if I then put some extra strong readers on, it should fix the problem. But it didn't pan out that way because the strength for distance was a lot worse than I realised. Even with readers on, or stupid things like, you'd get your phone out your pocket to check the time, or you pull your phone out just to sort of, check a quick text. I couldn't read it. And it wasn't even that I couldn't read it because my vision is that bad that I need, a strong strength for reading, because I barely need, it's computer work. So computers and that distance, I need assistance. But reading, I don't. So if I take my contact lenses out and I don't put my glasses on, I can see clear as day for my reading. I just can't see anything when I look up, which again is no good, especially when you're sort of sitting there thinking, well, if I'm sitting here doing my stitching, sitting here stitching is fine, but to look up and look at the telly, I can't see a thing. Or have a chat with Darren, I don't see anything. Everything becomes a blur. So I was thinking, well, if I put contact lenses in and then put a pair of glasses on to bring the sight back in, it should just correct one for the other. It doesn't work that way, apparently. So I've been having some issues more for just the fact that I've basically just been going with my glasses, because my glasses are varifocals, which fixes everything. But I do get a bit, it gets on my nerves wearing glasses all the time, the fact that they steam up. Hang on, I'm just going to check to make sure we don't go wrong here. So, yeah, the glasses annoy me. They get steamed up, especially now that I'm doing a lot more commuting. And the fact that it's been, the weather over here has been a really odd odd sort of weather. It's like 1 minute it feels like it's warmer and milder, and then it'll go from that to freezing cold, which I'm sure for those of you that wear glasses, you know, if you go from freezing cold outside and then walk inside, all of a sudden you just steam up, and then you can't see where you're going and you can't see anything. Then we've had rain and lots of it. And of course, whilst I'm commuting, I feel like I need window wipers on my glasses because it's that bad. And rain in London doesn't come down straight because you're always between buildings, and the wind sort of whips around the buildings. It's more rain comes down sideways. It comes in at a different angle. So therefore, even when you think, you know, I've got a brolly up, my glasses still end up covered in raindrops. So glasses, yeah, they're not my most favourite things in the world. Hence why contact lenses for me has always been such a big deal and so easy, because I just put them in at the beginning of the day. I can see distance, I can see close up, I can see my stitching, and then I take them out at the end of the day. Now, when I went back to the opticians yesterday, they said there is a possible alternative. That instead of having one eye doing short and one eye doing long, and having to accept that, you know, my close-up is going to be slightly blurry because it's only one eye doing the close-up, and that one eye is going to do the short. So one eye basically does short distance and one eye does long distance. But because of that, at no point is everything clear as mud. It's not as clear as it should be, or as I would like it to be. The whole one eye for short and one eye for long is not ideal. For me specifically. I think if I wasn't spending so much time looking at my phones, doing stitching on the train, and then going to computer work, and then looking at things at a distance, it wouldn't be such a... I think the stitching actually makes it so that we're a bit more conscious of what is good vision versus what isn't. Because in all fairness, my contact lenses before, where it did one eye short, one eye long, used to work perfectly fine until I was doing my stitching. Because when you've only got one eye that's doing one and one eye is doing the other, it's never as 100% as clear as I would like it. So when you put your glasses on, because I've got varifocals, I was finding that even with the varifocals, especially if I had my stitching quite close, wasn't such a big deal until I had my stitching close to me. But I kept it at further a distance. It was fine. But obviously I ventured more into smaller counts these days. So, you know, the 40 counts, the 32s, the 36. As soon as I got past 18 count, it was noticeable. Not massively noticeable. It wasn't like I couldn't see, but it was definitely a lot more noticeable. So that was why I sort of thought, well, you know, the contact lenses are a problem. But then even with the glasses, with the varifocals, if I took my glasses off and then looked at my stitching, I could see my stitching clearer without glasses. But by taking my glasses off, I then can't see anything else. I couldn't see the chart, I couldn't see my iPad, I certainly can't see the TV. So it's finding the happy balance, which you'd think would be easy, right? It's like everyone else manages it okay. However, for me, I've been really struggling with the whole contact lenses. But then I've been struggling with the glasses. So I made the executive decision yesterday that we was going to try some new contact lenses. Now, normally my contact lenses are dailies. So every day in the morning you put them in, you use them for the day. Oh dear, hold up. had a bit of a malfunction there. A thread so slippy that my knot undid. First world problems, people. So like I was saying, so the problem that I have is the contact lenses that I normally use, I put in the morning, I wear them for the day, and then at night you take them out and you throw them in the bin. The beauty of that is you don't need to worry about cleaning anything, and they're normally quite thin and soft. However, the new suggestion, so the new contact lens option, requires me to have monthlies because they only do them in monthlies. Would you believe? 6. It sounds like hubby's up, so I might have to start wrapping this video up because he's got his telly on and he's rather loud and noisy, his hubby, along with his TV. So I'm sorry if you can hear the TV in the background. Hopefully my music is drowning that out. So basically, we're now going to move to a monthly, which will require for them to be took out and put in a pot overnight. It requires for them to be cleaned. And generally, I don't actually know whether they're going to be as comfortable and have like the water content that I require for my eyes. I mean, who knows? I'm going to try it. The beauty of the new ones is apparently this is a contact lens that does everything, but in both eyes at the same time. I know. I'm like, well, how does it do that? So a bit like with my contact lenses that I wear now, because they're for astigmatism, they're weighted. They have like a little weight in them, so that because my eyeball is not round, it's like a rugby ball shaped, it makes it so that because the contact lens is sort of round circular, it lifts up on one side, which then distorts your vision. And astigmatisms do that as a general rule. That's why they're a bit more tricky to deal with than a normal, just, you know, you've got a vision issue. So because of that, they have weights in them, so that wherever it's not round and it turns a bit rugby ball shaped, the weight actually presses the contact lens round and down to correct the vision. Now, the new ones that I'm going to get, I'm not quite sure how they work, other than the fact that they do a bit of long distance, a bit of mid distance, and for those that need it, the short distance. So it's going to be a bit trial and error. So I've got a trial pair, which I think will be coming in the next 2 weeks. And then I'm going to need to trial them. So yeah, it could be a bit interesting as to whether this is a complete foul or it's what I've always been waiting for. Other than actually going and getting my eyes done. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Hold on, counting. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. 7, 8, 9. Because I'm out here alone in this area, I'm just being really, really careful that I don't miscount, because it could all go very, very wrong if I do miscounting. So when I made a little joke at the contact lens at the opticians about the contact lenses, and said I wish I was brave enough to have the laser eye surgery, he turned around and said to me, well, the problem that you've got is you couldn't just have laser eye surgery, because laser eye surgery normally just fixes sort of what you can't see in the distance, or it only does one thing. And as he said, that's not really an option for me. So when I said to him, what, so when all these people were talking about laser eye surgery, it wouldn't be something that would work for me? And he was like, well, he said, unlikely. He said, it wouldn't be something that would help you. He said, what you would need, he said, is I think he called it a lens replacement. So basically they would take off the top film of my eye and give me somebody else's. And I was like, do you know what? If I ever thought for 1 minute that I was thinking it might be a good idea, I said, you just really put me off. Like instantly. Instant put off at that point. So there was me sitting there thinking, maybe one day I'll be brave enough to go and get laser eye surgery. Because laser eye surgery as standard is not an option for me, that will not be an avenue that I can venture down, unfortunately. I thought it was just a straightforward case that I'd be the same as everybody else and I could just get laser eye surgery. But no, not the case. Not the case at all. Right, I'm just checking to make sure. See now, why does that appear to be in a different place? I'm sure that's okay. Well, it's a big, strong, straight run. So we'll go down until I disappear off of the end of the fabric here. And then I'll count and mark off. When I'm not sitting here on a stitch with me. So there we go. There's the dilemmas of Teresa's eyes. But it will be interesting to see what happens. So I did order a new pair of glasses. So I have a nice new pair of glasses coming. Because it's always nice to have a good backup. So I've got the usual varifocals with the anti-glare. But like I say, I'm more about the contact lenses. If I can get away with most of the things that I do with my contact lenses in, then that to me is like the best thing ever. I mean, believe it or not, you wouldn't realise it, but even when you're doing, well, for those of you that do videos or Flosstube or anything where you're trying to record yourself, if you wear glasses, you have a hell of a problem trying to stop the reflection of any lights in your glasses. With contact lenses, I don't have that problem. So like when I sit here with the live stream and I've got the lights on so that you can see the stitching, there's normally a reflection in my glasses. So I have to be careful of where I place my head so that you don't get a full-on reflection of nothing other than the reflection in the room from my glasses. When I have the privilege of being able to wear my contact lenses, I don't have that problem at all. So yeah, for me, the preference is contact lenses, and because it's just easier, you know, especially when I'm commuting, I'm in London. If I need to put sunglasses on, I don't need to worry about having another pair of prescription sunglasses. And, you know, you take one pair of glasses off and then you need another pair. And because my bag is brimming to the full when I commute into London, along with my stitching, I haven't got room for 2 glass cases. And because I know what I'm like, there is no way that I could have a soft fabric glasses case. It would need to be hard cases. So we will see. We will see how we get on. Now, things have got very, very loud because now Bonbons has just come in the room and pushed the door open. So all I can hear is hubby's TV. So I think it's time to call it. I hope this sort of makes up for the fact that there's no live stream this Sunday evening. Fingers crossed. I will see how things pan out for next week. I've got a sneaky suspicion I need to be in London on the Monday next week as well. So I might either consider doing a live stream earlier in the day, if that's an option for anybody. Maybe that's a question that I need to post out. Maybe I'll post a poll up of if I was to do sort of an afternoon live, whether it would still work for people. Because for me, afternoons probably would be slightly easier. Although I say that, if it's hot and sunny outside, then I don't want to be in here doing streaming. That's the beauty of evenings. But yeah, maybe I just need to push it slightly earlier. I don't know. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me what works. You know, if it was a case that I did a live stream earlier, would that be a problem? And for those of you that don't watch the live streams, then, you know, I get it. I'll keep posting stitch with me's as and when I can do them, but fingers crossed. I'm going to go off and have some breakfast now and maybe get some stitching in later, but I've got some gardening to do because it's actually officially stopped raining, which is always a good thing. On that note, I'm going to go because husband's making an absolute racket out there and destroying this whole video at the end. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you all have a lovely week, and I will see you all again very soon. So bye bye for now.